During the presentation, we will touch on several areas, including what does it mean in regards to end of support. As we approach July 14th, 2015, what are the potential security risks and costs of failing to upgrade? We will also discuss the benefits achieved from modern, innovative hardware, cloud operating systems, and applications. And towards the end of the webinar, we will discuss how DISYS can help migrate your Windows 2003 legacy servers. To kick things off, I'd like to spend just a few minutes to recognize just how long Windows Server 2003 has been in service. If you will, please follow along with me as we take a seat in our DeLorean and set the time circuits back 12 years to the year 2003. Just like anyone that can claim 12 years of IT experience on their resume is likened to a veteran in the industry, Windows Server 2003 has been powering data centers that many businesses rely on for mission-critical applications and infrastructure. Who remembers Tom Anderson, the ubiquitous Tom guy? He was every user's first friend when they initially logged into MySpace. Rapidly becoming one of the largest online companies, MySpace was nothing short of a cultural phenomenon. Back then, MySpace registered about 230,000 users a day at one time and even surpassed Google in terms of traffic, boasting over 200 million users. There are very few digitally connected people today that haven't heard of Apple iTunes. At launch in April of 2003, the iTunes Music Store featured over 200,000 songs and rapidly caught the attention of consumers, enabling them to quickly find and purchase, download the music they wanted for just 99 cents per song without subscription fees. In 2003, California voters elected Arnold Schwarzenegger as state governor. During that same year, a worm named SQL Slammer made headlines across the globe and impacted everything from ATMs to DNS servers. During the attack, Bank of America reported 13,000 cash machines refused to dispense cash. On Saturday, January 25th, 2003, the worm began to spread across the internet, infecting more than 90% of the vulnerable systems within 10 minutes and took many small networks offline with its scanning. Spreading hundreds of times faster than any other worm, Slammer was ruthless and quick. As a self-propagating worm, the SQL Slammer would locate a vulnerable system, infect it, and then begin to propagate. Slammer was doubling in size every 8.5 seconds, and within 3 minutes, it had scanned approximately 55 million IP addresses per second, causing disruption to core services across the internet. That same year, another Windows vulnerability made headlines. This time, the exploit was named the Blaster Worm. The Blaster Worm, also known as Love Sand, created havoc in late summer 2003 with widespread denial of service attacks, with damage totaling in the hundreds of millions. And last but not least, during the spring of 2003, Microsoft Windows Server 2003 hit the shelves. For the next 12 years, Windows Server 2003 would be updated and re-released in 15 different versions. Its popularity is likened to Windows XP and incorporated compatibility features many IT professionals were demanding after the headaches brought on by Windows Server 2000 and Windows NT domains. The point I'd like to make here is that the world of information technology, things move at a very rapid pace. Today, a new app can be released and generate millions of dollars in revenue just the first day, and just as quickly, a small amount of code can exploit a vulnerability and wipe that all away. So, what does end of support actually mean? Well, first off, no updates. 37 critical updates were released in 2013 for Server 2003 and R2 under extended support. No updates will be developed or released after end of support. No compliance. Lack of compliance with various standards and regulations can be devastating. This may include various regulatory industry standards for which compliance can no longer be achieved. For example, lack of compliance with PCI might mean companies such as Visa or MasterCard will no longer do business with your organization. Or the cost of doing business will include paying catastrophic penalties and astronomically high transaction fees. There might be a few of you saying to yourself, my company doesn't operate under regulatory compliance, or My Windows Server 2003 infrastructure is stable. I don't see the need to upgrade. It's just not broken. On a side note, I'm actually crossing my fingers hoping none of you are actually thinking that, but staying put will essentially cost more in the long run. Maintenance costs for aging hardware will also increase. Adding costs will incur for intrusion detection systems, more advanced firewalls, network segmentation, and so on, simply just to isolate Windows Server 2003 servers. Essentially, there is no safe haven for Windows Server 2003 after July 14th. Both physical and virtualized servers are at risk, and additionally, the risk extends to all versions post-RTM, including Windows Server 2003 R2. If you think there's no more Windows Server 2003 exploits, well, I urge you to think again. Just recently, last year, 2 critical updates a month on average were released for Windows Server 2003. This is something that should not be ignored. As defined by Microsoft Security Response Center, a rating of critical, the worst theoretical outcome. Outcomes like remote code execution without user interaction. Scenarios include self-propagating malwares, unavoidable common use scenarios where code execution occurs without warnings or prompts. This can mean browsing to a web page or just opening an email and then you're infected. So now's the time to act. The cost of doing nothing can easily reach millions of dollars. Windows Server 2003 provided IT with an amazing operating system for the last 10 years. But IT has changed a lot since then. The industry is moving forward, and so has the operating system. It's important to understand why your peers are making the transformation. The main point here, in the face of exploding need for technology that supports the business, we need to transform the data center to take advantage of cloud computing models. Today, every area of business, from marketing to sales to human resources, depends on technology. As a result, the need for IT resources is growing steadily. The move to cloud computing reflects the trend. As businesses' requirements grow and change, flexible options for keeping up with that growth is by accessing cloud capacity. We are all seeing trends that reflect the growth of cloud. The question is, how can IT build a cloud strategy that makes sense? And just as important, how can IT continue to take advantage of the strengths of today's data center while evolving to a new hybrid cloud model? There are a few key points I'd like to bring to your attention. 71% of companies see rising demand for IT projects in 2015. To keep costs down and to make it possible for IT to respond to the rising demand, the IDC predicts that by 2016, 70% of CIOs will embrace the cloud-first strategy. By 2020, Forrester is saying that 45% of total IT spending will be cloud-related. All these statistics point to the fact that customers are looking for more agility, increased ease of management, and access to cloud capacity to enable them to handle increased demands without increasing costs. Entertain the option of moving to not just Windows Server 2012 R2, but also taking advantage of cloud services such as Amazon Web Services or Microsoft Azure. When you think about moving to a hybrid cloud model, there are 3 things that you really have to take into consideration in order for hybrid to work. First of all, you need options on demand. You need to be able to extend the cloud when it makes sense for your business and according to your own company's needs. Your data center today is configured to meet all the specific needs of your business, and your cloud solution should meet that same standard. Think about consistency across clouds, management, and heterogeneous resources, and workload mobility. Next, you need to reduce cost and complexity. There's a common misperception that moving to the cloud is going to increase the burden on IT. You need to take advantage of innovation in the right way, meaning real-world solutions to old problems. Finally, and most important, you have to be able to deliver a rapid response to the business. Transforming the data center has to make you faster. So whatever resources you add or whatever changes you make, the standard has it enabled IT to deliver services more rapidly. This is something we often see here at DISYS. It's what I refer to as the evolution of IT. Traditionally, IT is viewed as a cost center, a black hole that sucks up funding. But with the cloud, IT now has an opportunity to better align and respond to the needs of the business. With the cloud evolving from being viewed as a cost center to a revenue generator and business enabler, IT is changing how our clients are doing business. Once you have pooled resources or put a private cloud in place in your own data center, you can take the next step and expand outside the data center, connecting to the cloud. This gives you a nearly endless set of resources to draw on as needed. The main question here is you need to consider is when to leverage the public cloud resources. Think about mobility, workloads, unpredictable demand, and where you can reduce costs with cloud resources. The cloud is an ideal platform to extend your own data center capacity. You can easily access cloud resources when it makes the most sense for your business. New applications or websites that require global scale-up in a snap, infrastructure that needs to scale at a moment's notice to meet the most demanding business requirements, or cloud economics that allow you to reduce your on-premise costs for things like storage, backup, and recovery. And you get consistency across clouds, so that's when you're taking advantage of a hybrid model. You're not adding a whole lot of complexity to the process. So we've discussed the significance of July 14th and 2015 and the risk and cost of operating Windows Server 2003 after support ends. We've also touched on the benefits of migrating away from Windows Server 2003 and leveraging modern hardware, software, and cloud technologies. Now let's spend just a few minutes to talk about the infrastructure support services practice here at DISYS, how we go about tackling some of these challenges Windows Server 2003 presents. Essentially, we follow a four-phased approach or basic groups of activities. They are discover, assess, target, and remediate. The first step, discovery, the activities during this step include data collection. When we work with our clients on Windows Server 2003 migration, we use non-intrusive data collection tools to help us paint a detailed picture of the environment. We collect data not just limited to the operating system and version, but also the applications that reside on the servers, as well as the hardware information that powers these operating systems and applications. All of this information is necessary as we move into the next step, and that's the assess phase. Step 2 activities allow us to build a valuable, varying perspective on the environment. We essentially catalog by type, criticality, and complexity. We can see things such as dependencies and the systems that could be affected by an upgrade. We take a very close look at the core services while evaluating and determining risk. We spend time to drill into every application. This is especially important as many times organizations might not be aware of all the applications within their environment. From our perspective, it's very common to see business units within large organizations procure and operate their own applications, circumventing IT. Our goal is to understand every application and determine risk and compatibility when it's time to migrate. After we've drilled down in every application, we then begin to evaluate the different options available. This is the period at which most of our customers begin to understand the power of operating systems, modern operating systems, and hardware and cloud computing. Depending upon the requirements of the business, we see clients leverage the power of Windows Server 2012 R2 to house their applications. Some of our clients like the flexibility and predictability, granular control the cloud provides. Other clients choose a combination of on-premise and cloud to form a hybrid solution, while others move to leverage virtualization, either in a host capacity or application virtualization as an option. So essentially, our approach is to, after we've identified the risk and determined dependencies and migration options available and where we need to go, we follow a 5-step plan. We migrate as is, meaning the application can be migrated without change. We sometimes might need to find an alternate. Maybe the application is no longer supported. Many of our clients tell us the reason that they're staying on Windows Server 2003 is that the application, perhaps the vendor, the ISV that originally created it, is no longer around. So maintaining that does definitely represent a risk. So finding an application alternative to act in place of that non-supported application is an option as well. Additionally, we see many clients that essentially retrofit their applications, either by shimming it or rewriting code that's no longer compatible, essentially to make sure that it can work with modern operating systems. We also use virtualization, as I mentioned earlier, from an application perspective, to do things like just application virtualization down at the desktop, or building essentially virtualized environments to just so the applications can stick around a little bit longer. The virtualization or shim approach is not the long-term approach. We do advise many of our clients to think about the alternatives and create a long-term plan on decoupling that application from its dependency on the operating system. And of course, the last option is upgrading the application. It must be upgraded to the latest version if that's acceptable. So the next steps, essentially, we can get started and help you determine your impact of Windows Server 2003 in your environment. We are open to questions. Gordon, I'm going to go ahead and send it back over to you and see if we have any questions that might need to be answered.
Yeah, we got a few questions in, George. So you kind of briefly touched on the support aspect. What's the difference between mainstream support and extended support?
Good question. Now, mainstream support actually ended in 2010. We are currently at the end of extended support. Now, there is a third tier which is called custom support. Now, custom support is essentially you need to go directly to Microsoft, and they will draft an agreement, a support agreement, for any instances of Windows Server 2003 that you might have in your environment. Now that is very, very costly. Again, it is a custom support agreement. It's not something that you can purchase from any licensed reseller or online. It's something that is created uniquely for your organization.
Thanks, George. And again, to anybody that's listening, if you do have any questions, please utilize the questions box from your GoToWebinar panel. Next question for you, George. If my business is subject to independent audits, is there a chance of non-compliance if I do not act?
Yes, absolutely. Even depending upon how your internal policies are written, but most likely there's going to be something in regards to ongoing support or having some type of safety net in regards to the vendor that originally created or supporting that application. So we have rarely seen the case where even if it's federally mandated, state, local government, or even private, where a application can continue to operate in a compliant fashion while the vendor for that application no longer supports it.
And what are the, I guess, typical fines associated with a non-compliance?
That varies. If you're in the financial industry, it could be based on per transaction. If you think about perhaps a payment system that's back-ended on Windows Server 2003, where you have sensitive information, the penalties can be based all the way down on the individual transactions, meaning that you can be fined for each time a credit card was swiped and it went through a system that is no longer compliant.
Next question for you, George. how do I know if I can migrate my own systems or if I need help migrating?
Oh, that's a magic question, right? There's I don't know a way of directly answering that question. I can just kind of share with my perspective on things. The benefit of working with an organization such as DISYS is that we've been doing this for a long time. I've been working in professional services in the IT services capacity for 17 years. I've seen migrations and upgrades. It's just a part of the evolutionary landscape of IT. We have seen and learned from what to do, what not to do, and we've also come with experience varying from different types of organizations. We work in healthcare, we work in finance, we work in government. So with that experience, we can easily look forward and ahead and identify possible issues. I'm not saying that your team can't do that themselves, but it's kind of like going to an experienced mechanic when you have a problem with your car, or you pick up a children's manual and you figure it out yourself, or maybe go online to watch some YouTube on how to fix your car. The experience does have a wealth of benefits.
Thanks. And this next question kind of goes back to the associated risks. What contingency plans are there for companies who understand the risk but can't make immediate plans to address it? So, like, for example, an organization doesn't have a budget until early 2016.
There's a few things that you can do. One, I would strongly look into that support agreement, even though you might not have the financial the funding to do so. At least work with Microsoft to understand if that's something doable. But two, take a look at the criticality of the applications that those servers are supporting. Essentially, we really need to understand and determine risk, and spend maybe half a day just brainstorming, whiteboarding, what would it play out, what would it look like if an application or server that is important to your business is no longer available. If you run through the math, you'll quickly see that the risks just outweigh the cost of buying time or waiting around. You can be proactive, you can isolate as much as possible, but essentially if these machines are connected to any type of copper and can make their way out to the internet, or even accessed by humans for that matter, they have the chance of being vulnerable.
Thanks, George. Next question. Are there any trends DISYS is seeing with regard to which cloud solutions are being implemented in which industries?
It's a good question. Industries, we've seen a lot in healthcare quite a bit. We've seen a lot in just in the private space, manufacturing. They like to leverage the ability to see the benefits of automation. We have seen it extend into government. We're working on a few projects right now where our clients do some work in the government space. It really varies. I wouldn't say that there's a industry out there that's has a higher concentration of cloud activities, but I would say I wouldn't say it's evenly spread as well, but I would say it's everyone's essentially using it.
And for example, are some industries more likely to go with like a hybrid solution?
Yeah, the evolution to get to the path to get to the cloud is one that we advise on and that we see regularly is a slow approach, meaning that clients typically start out with infrastructure as a service, meaning that they might identify an application or a server as one of the first to go out to the cloud. As an example, a new client might think about first extending their network, creating a VPN between their on-premise environment and the cloud. The next step would be pick out a pilot application. It might be a new application. It might be an app dev environment. We see a lot of organizations that have their own IT developers, code developers, move that workload to the cloud. The benefit is it's not always on in the cloud, meaning that if the developers are working on a project, maybe they're using an agile development methodology, and they've got a 2 or 3 week sprint, and they can ramp up and leverage cloud resources on demand to get whatever they need to get done, and they can turn it off and not incur those costs. So for use cases such as that, where your use of the environment varies, the cloud is a really good fit.
Thanks, George. I think that sums up all the questions I've received. Just as a reminder to all attendees, I will be sending out the webinar slide deck along with George's contact information and the webinar recording. But that concludes our webinar for today. George, do you have any final comments?
No, that's it. Thank you very much, and I appreciate everybody's time today.
Thanks very much, everybody. Have a good day.